you.
Yeah, and let people know that we love questions. We like to have questions throughout the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, I put it in the chat.
Okay.
Great.
Great. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at the Helping Parents Heal meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. And I'm just going to quickly, first of all, say that Heidi and Gloria are both amazing. As you probably know, Gloria is a Shining Light mom, Heidi is a Shining Light sibling, and they have done so much with their lives to honor their son and their sibling Scott by making this incredible foundation. They founded the Open to Hope Foundation, and they do podcasts, they do television shows, they do radio shows. They're both amazing, but I'm going to go ahead and read their bios for you. Dr. Gloria Horsley is a Shining Light mom, an internationally known grief expert and psychotherapist. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, clinical nurse specialist, and past facility member of the University of Rochester. Dr. Horsley hosts Open to Hope television and podcasts. She has made appearances on numerous television and radio programs, including The Today Show, and has authored a number of articles and books, including Teen Grief Relief. She serves on the advisory boards for the Tragedy Assistance Program and the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation. Dr. Heidi Horsley is a Shining Light sibling, a licensed psychologist, and a social worker. She co-hosts the award-winning weekly cable television show and podcast, Open to Hope. Dr. Heidi is an adjunct professor at Columbia University and an award-winning author who has co-authored 8 books. She serves on the advisory boards for the Tragedy Assistance Program, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation, and the Children's Brain Tumor Foundation. So without further ado, I'd like for all of you to welcome Heidi and Gloria Horsley, and they will be taking questions during their talk. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat box. Thank you.
Well, Elizabeth, so exciting to be on with you today, and nothing we like more than talking about healing after the loss of a sibling, and as my own case, a child. But as Heidi always reminds me, siblings sort of get the short shift. So let's get on to talking about things that you should know about a sibling. And Heidi, take the stage.
Okay, so I want to start out with a quote that I really like, and it says, "When you lose a parent, you lose part of your past. When you lose a child, you lose part of your future. And when you lose a sibling, you lose both." So the interesting thing about sibling loss is that most people will spend 80 to 100% of their lifetime with their siblings. 80 to 100%. And if you compare that to the parent, usually you'll spend 40 to 60% of your life with a parent. You know, our siblings come into our world with us at relatively the same time. They take the journey through life with us. We're supposed to go to their graduations, go to their weddings, have children around the same time, grow old together. you know, all these experiences. Mom, feel free to step in. You know, I could get on a roll all day about this.
From a parent's point of view, a lot of the things Heidi was talking about, I really didn't occur to me when my son was killed. You know, I was trying to survive, trying to take care of myself. And I think Heidi, as my oldest child, has spent a lot of time taking care of us, strangely enough. Heidi was 21, right, when Scott was killed?
I was 20 when my 17-year-old brother died.
And then her sister was 19, and then we had a younger daughter, 14. So, you know, Heidi, I think, was taking care of us, but I didn't realize what a traumatic thing it was. But I was so worried about my kids. I was so worried about how, you know, what they were doing. And they were always in my mind, but I felt like I was totally dysfunctional. But Heidi tells me it wasn't that bad, right, Heidi?
Well, it's not necessarily that it wasn't that bad, but we as siblings, and you know, I've worked with thousands of siblings. I've been, you know, I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the sudden death of a sibling, and I am in a private practice of siblings. So what I want to say about this is, it's bad because we're in grieving families. It's bad for all of us at the time, but we realize what parents are going through. We hear you all crying. We hear you crying in the shower. We hear you in the basement. We hear you. We're listening with glasses to the walls to see if we can eavesdrop. We know what kind of pain you're in. Even if you try to hide it from us, we still know. So we understand that you're grieving the loss of a child. And so we cut you slack. We know you're not going to be bringing your A game in because you're doing the best that you can, given that this has impacted the entire family. So siblings understand that. When we lose a sibling, we lose the emotional availability of our parents. It's a double loss, but we understand why. You love your child and they died. I mean, you know, they passed. It's very hard for everybody. So yes, that's what I want to say, because I know parents can feel really guilty, really like they're not doing enough, but you're doing the best that you can given the situation. And we get it. More than we're telling you, we get it.
It's amazing how much guilt there is to go around. I know Heather's, Heidi's sister, who was 14 at the time, said that she had wished she'd been with her brother. She should have been on vacation in the car where he and my nephew were killed. And she felt that she should have been there at the time. So that was her kind of guilt thing. And then my guilt thing was that I didn't let him take my car. And, you know, why did I do this? And why did I take him to Washington? And why did I even know my cousin? And, you know, a lot of guilt. What was your guilt, Heidi?
Well, I want to say survivor guilt is very normal for siblings. My brother was the only boy in a sea of girls, and we adored him. The girls fought a lot, but we adored him. And then the only boy dies. And so there was 3 girls, and I had a lot of guilt that the wrong child died. When a sibling passes, a lot of the family's energy is going towards that sibling that's passed. There's a lot of photographs up. There's a lot of mourning that's going on. The family is centered around the person that died, which is, I understand. But sometimes I felt like I wasn't enough. And that my parents would have been better off if I was the one that had passed instead of my brother. And, you know, I've actually said that to my mom before. And of course, your response was?
Yeah, well, I don't know. What did I exactly say? You certainly were enough and have been fabulous, all of you kids.
She reassured me that that was ridiculous and that wasn't true. And while we have reassurances from our parents, deep down, a lot of us still think it is true. Mm-hmm. So that's a normal feeling to have. And I think that being around other siblings and spending a lot of time with siblings that have had a sibling pass has helped me to realize that a lot of siblings, most siblings, feel that way, but sometimes we don't tell you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talk about disenfranchised, Heidi, about how sibling grief gets disenfranchised.
Well, you know, when people found out that my brother had died, their first response, and you all know this, if we were chatting in the class, I would say, what do you think people would say? When they say, oh my gosh, your brother died, the first thing they would say is, how is your parents? Mm-hmm. And the second thing they would say was, you need to be strong for your parents. And the third thing they would say was, the worst loss that could ever happen to anyone is the loss of a child.
Mm-hmm. And they would tell you that in the line at the funeral home, or you know, wherever you are, you get those little whispers in your ears. And I remember when Scott passed, we had shopping bags full of sympathy cards, and you know, of course, that was before email and all that kind of thing. And Heidi, how many did you get?
I got one, and I was 20, and I still remember her name, Bridget Finnerty. She sent me a card, and it was the only card I got. So, you know, it's not our parents that are telling us be strong for us. They're not saying that. It's everybody else out there that they're whispering behind our parents' backs, saying, you have to really step up now. Your parents are going through a lot. You need to be there. So what we end up doing is we end up stepping up, and I would hide my grief from my parents. And so with my sisters, because we felt like they had been through so much, we needed to be strong for them. And I hear parents over and over and over say, why aren't my children grieving in front of you? And my response is, because they're trying to be good kids.
Exactly. You know, we have a question here, and I just want to tell you, you guys are doing a fabulous job, and you're bringing up all of these thoughts and feelings that I have. One of the things that my kids are constantly telling me is that Morgan wasn't a god. He wasn't somebody that we need to idolize, and we don't need to constantly put him up on a pedestal. I think that that's a hard thing for them. But Rebecca asks a question. She says, my daughter, 28, now an only child, is now estranged after 2 years. Her brother passed due to an overdose. I don't know what to do. She's angry, bringing up past grievances of growing up and possibly placing blame, though she's not said this. What can I do? Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
How old is she?
Rebecca, how old is your daughter? Could you put that in the chat box, or maybe? Let's see.
2 years.
And how long has it been? She's 28. And how long has it been, Rebecca?
2 years.
Since 2 years?
Was that
what you said? Okay.
Wow.
Does that help?
I have to say, for one thing,
2.5 years.
2 years is not a long time. It really isn't. It's 2 years. The second year can be really tough for bereaved parents. And it's because the second year, the first year, you kind of, you know, frozen, kind of dealing with it. I got through this, I got through that. And I remember my second year, it was like, this is it. The birthday, the Christmas, the whatever, this is it. This is what my life's going to be like. So the only reason I bring up that is because sometimes when our kids approach us, we don't realize the amount of pain we're still dealing with, and they're trying to deal with theirs. And they want, sounds to me like her daughter may want her mom to get on with it. I want you to be who you were. I want to get your energy up. How can I do that? I don't know. That's my thought. Heidi, what's your thought?
I don't know the details, but what's coming for me is we need validation and acknowledgement. So parents want to solve our problems when we come, which is a normal parent thing to do. I'm a parent now, I get it. But sometimes we need, if we're angry, I was mad as hell. It's not the life I signed up for. It's not the life that I had planned. And it was not the life that I wanted. And I needed to hear that that's a legitimate emotion. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be mad. I didn't want to be in a grieving family. You know, I wanted to be a normal, regular 20-year-old. None of my friends had had a sibling die. No one had any idea. Why did this happen to me? Why did I have to be the family that now is grieving and that is now different? I wanted my old life back. So I just needed to know that that's normal. That's okay. We all want our old lives back. You know, I didn't want to be in the situation anymore. So sometimes validation and acknowledgement is really important. And it sounds like Rebecca's doing a lot of saying things should have been different in the past, and maybe they should have, but we can't go back. Mm-hmm. So again, you know, empathizing.
Yeah, and try not to be too threatened by the past. I mean, you've got to try to stay in the future, what you're in. And as Heidi said, you can say, you know, I know there are a lot of things, but I'm not up to dealing with it right now. Maybe sometime we can. I mean, sometimes you're not ready for those kinds of things. And maybe at 28, she's old enough to hear, I'm not ready. I can't do it. you're asking me to go somewhere I can't go right now. I hope I will be able to, but being honest. But I wanted to say one thing, Elizabeth, about knocking, in the therapy world, we like to call it knocking people out of the box. Sometimes we get parentified kids, and this can happen after you've had sibling loss, where people step up and become more parentified. And when I used to do family therapy, we would call it knocking out of the box. How do you get those parentified kids off the pedestal? Well, one of the ways you do it is that you honor them. You get them off gently. You let them know you're in charge. You can't handle this now, but maybe you will be. But you also, pictures are a good example. You also get rid of the pictures. Have one picture. Have as many pictures of that daughter as you do of the person who died. When you do a toast during the holidays. Make it, or a birthday or an anniversary of the death or whatever, and toast to the child that died and to all my living children, because they are enough. They are enough. Your pain is your own pain. It's not their pain. It's not about them. It's about you and your pain. And they need to know that they're enough. They're enough. You're just in pain right now, but they're not. It's not, they can't do anything about it, right, Heidi?
Well, and I guess I want to say to the parents that are on this today, my heart goes out to you, because, you know, you're human and you're doing the best that you can, given that you've had the loss of a child. Siblings are angry, and we have no place to project that anger. And we're angry at the fact that our sibling died and that now we're in a grieving family. It's not your fault. But what are we going to do with that anger? You're safe. You're our safe people that we're going to project it onto. So you're going to sometimes feel like you're being battered for no reason. And you probably are. It's hard.
Yeah, and when people die early, you don't have time to work out those sibling relationships. Some people don't ever work them out, but some of us do. And some of us have good relations later on in life with siblings that we didn't get along with. But they just haven't had time. They've been cheated of the opportunity to work out those relationships, and we're sorry. But, but I think one of the things that Heidi and I were talking about earlier today, how important sibling groups are.
Yeah, I think they're amazing. I mean, if you can join a Compassionate Friends Facebook page, I don't know, do you guys have a sibling Facebook page?
We do have a sibling group.
Okay,
We have Helping
wonderful.
Siblings Heal as well. And
Wonderful. Really important.
Well, and I was just going to say that one of the things that's a problem, and Teva is saying something about this as well, is that we kind of become helicopter parents with our other children. And so I don't know if Heidi, if you can talk to that, and maybe if that was a problem in your home, that maybe, Gloria, you were worried about having something happen to the other kids in your family, and how you both handled that.
Well, things like wanting to know where they were every second. This was pre-cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was very worried about the kids, panicky early on. I remember Heather went to a party, and one of Scott's friends came over to the house and just kind of console us and talk about Scott. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you want me to go find Heather?" And I said, yes. I was panicky. And so he left and came back and said, she's at a friend's house, she's fine. But that was pre-cell phone. So Heidi, why don't you talk about that?
I think that I didn't feel that my parents were helicopter parents to me. But if I had been the only surviving sibling, I probably would have felt it more. But because I was in college and I wasn't living at home, but to my 14-year-old sister, definitely. And it's hard because that just, teenagers are separating and individuating right at that time. And when they have a sibling die, you're pulling them back into the family system. And understandably, you're concerned and worried. And I hear siblings over and over and over saying, stop worrying about me. I'm not my sibling. Nothing's going to happen to me. Mm-hmm. You're driving me crazy. Stop texting me and emailing me and, calling me constantly. And you know how it goes with parents. The more you do that, the more sometimes siblings will disappear and not respond. And then you really get worried.
And I've heard some really strong comments from families that I've worked with after you work with them for a while, particularly if there have been drug or alcohol deaths. I've heard, or a suicide, I've heard the siblings get very angry at the parents and say, stop, you need to stop. I am not my sibling. I am not going to do that. You need to stop doing it. But that takes a lot for families to get to that point sometimes. People are feeling that inside and the parents are feeling it justifiably, but it is, it's a balance. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because Sue is saying here, and it's true, that being that helicopter parent is a natural state. It's completely natural after having a child pass. It's good that you were in college, Heidi, but also she's explaining that when she grew strength and spiritual enlightenment and accepted that there's a life journey that we're going on and need to focus on ourselves and on the journey, it makes it easier. And I think that a lot of times the people in our group too just realize that their kids have one more angel watching out for them really, really carefully when this kind of thing happens, obviously.
And I agree with Sue. It's totally normal to be a helicopter parent and be anxious. You've had a child die. You know that children can pass away. So it's terrifying. That being said, I think you guys might be very interested to hear this. I don't know if this will surprise you. I am a bereaved sibling who now has children. I am worried one of them is going to die, or both. When my son turned 17, I was terrified. Absolutely terrified that he was going to die in a car accident, as my brother and cousin had both died together in a car at 17. And, I lived in Midtown Manhattan, so I just didn't let him get his license. He didn't get it till 19, but really, I had to be careful. I had to say, Heidi, be careful because you're a helicopter parent, and you're becoming overly anxious. I had to constantly check in with myself, and I still do with my kids. I have a 21-year-old and a 15-year-old. About not being overprotective of them, because it also impacts the way siblings parent. So it's interesting.
Well, I have to tell you that Heidi was just diagnosed with COVID about, 3 weeks ago, Heidi?
3.5 weeks ago, yeah.
3.5 weeks ago. And as a mother of a bereaved child, I was concerned, very concerned. I think Heidi was pretty cool about it, very good. But I was concerned about, thought about her dying with everything on. But I'm going to have to tell you that I think I'm stronger because of my son's death. It's been a long time, but I felt that I could be there to support Heidi. Whatever happened, I could be there for her. I know we talk about finding dimes. Scott sends us dimes. I don't know, we found thousands, haven't we, Heidi? In places.
I love it.
In taxi seats.
Wonderful.
I play golf on the golf course. We have found dimes everywhere where at times when we've needed them. And I think spiritually, I feel connected with him, and he's been a support through Heidi having COVID. So I think that we are, the Surgeon General came on and I heard him and he said, this is going to be the worst thing that ever happened to most people. And I thought, you don't even know the beginning of it. A child, a sibling, a grandchild, you don't even know the beginning of what pain that we've been through, and we'll make it. I think we're stronger than we think we are. Don't you, Heidi?
Yes. And like my mom said, on March 17th, I started getting symptoms of COVID-19, and I thought, I'm not going to have it. That's bizarre. But I ended up going to get tested, and I was COVID-19 positive, and it was very emotional. And I definitely thought, oh my gosh, my parents have already lost a child. They can't lose another one. It's always right on my mind all the time whenever anything happens. Mm-hmm. And I did feel like I had to protect them to a certain extent. I told them I was sick, and I called them, and it was very emotional, but sometimes I didn't tell them the depth of how it was at night when I was worried about not being able to breathe, because I felt like I didn't want to worry them too much. So, the idea of being overprotective lasts a lifetime. It keeps going. And I'm fine now. I don't have any symptoms. I was, I isolated and et cetera, and took care of myself. And it took about 3 weeks. And the only thing that I don't have right now is I can't smell anything or taste anything. Other than that, I don't have symptoms. Thank God.
Which is good that that's all that is left. And so
I'm very blessed given what's happening in the country and how many people are struggling for their life.
And I'm 100% sure that Scott helped you through this. And you're right. And that's something that we've talked about in Helping Parents Heal, that we've been through the worst experience in our lives. And what could be more difficult than having a child pass? And so we are stronger, as you said, Gloria. And thank heavens that we have been through something so difficult to know that this too shall pass. But Rhonda asked a question. She said, how do you talk to your kids about your spiritual journey? They're not as open as I am, and I can only share some of my spiritual stuff. So she's asking about, in terms of telling our siblings, the siblings, I don't know if at the time, Heidi, you were as spiritual as you are now. Did you believe that Scott was in a wonderful place and that he was okay? Did you guys talk about that at home, or is it something that you discussed at all?
I personally, my brother died very traumatically. It was a very traumatic accident. And I had to, from my own, I wasn't sure if there was a heaven, but I had to believe that there was. And I do believe that there is. I had to believe that he was in a better place because it helped me cope a lot. And I do believe that his spirit is still around me and he's my guiding light. And that has helped me tremendously in that belief system.
Mm-hmm. And we were raised in a religious family and praying and, for generations. So I think that was really helpful. But I do think if your family is not on the same page religious-wise, I think it's hard because you have these sacred things happen to you, and when do you share them, and who are safe people that you share them with? And I think that you do, particularly early on after the loss, you need to be careful that you do keep these sacred experiences safe with people. But I think it is also lovely to tell safe people about your experiences and your dreams. And I had a very healing dream and those kinds of things. And it was funny because I told a religious person who was a bishop in my church about my dream, and he didn't understand it. And that is so interesting to me because now I fully understand it. And I guess some things you're gonna learn later what they were. And it's an amazing thing. So.
Well, you're bringing up a good point, Mom, because 3 months after my brother died, I went on an Outward Bound survival course that he had been on the year before. And I was having a very, very hard time, physically and emotionally doing this. And we were going up a mountain and it was really bad. I was sick. I was throwing up. And I said to him, you have to come here. You have to help me. And somebody put their hands on my back and pushed me effortlessly up a very steep mountain with a very heavy backpack. And I looked behind me and there was no one there. And I knew it was him. And so that profoundly changed my life because I thought, you know what? Even though I can't see him, I know he's here. But I kept that story to myself for a very long time because I didn't want anyone to argue with my reality and tell me that didn't happen, because I know it did.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it probably till 10 years ago, Heidi.
Yeah, it was a sacred thing that I didn't feel like I could share, or I wanted to share, I should say.
So some things you definitely want to hold. But Heidi, before we end it, I wanted to talk about some of the things, Elizabeth, it sounds good to you, that we did during that time to help us.
Yes, that would be wonderful. I just wanted to first of all say that both of my daughters have experienced Morgan really saving their lives. I know that is something that they do. And I truly believe, I just want to throw this out there, that siblings can be some of the people who actually advocate and create the biggest changes that are the best things that can happen to our society, because they understand, they've been through this, they've been dealing with this grief from a very young age. And if they come through it well, they can truly be some of the most incredible people as they grow. And I know that this has happened to you, Heidi. But yes, I would love to hear some of the things that have helped you. We have other questions after.
Oh, well, let's do questions then.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We love questions.
Well, okay. So Litzy is asking, after my oldest son died, almost 2 years after his little brother passed, I have bouts of tremendous guilt that I didn't pay enough attention to him and didn't let him know that I loved him as much as his brother. Any suggestions to get past this would be appreciated.
Well, my friend Darcy Sims used to say, if your child was here with you now, what would you say to them? You'd say, I love you. Do you think they knew you loved you? Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They knew we loved them. And we called them.
I agree with that, Mom. And you know what? Sometimes kids get annoyed when you keep telling them you love them because we actually know. so I mean, maybe, you know, I agree with you, Mom. Your child knew that you loved them and you did the best that you could.
Yeah, always the best you could at the time. We know that you did, and your child, wherever they are right now, knows that you did too, and they love you. So, you know, and if you feel like you need to say more, write them a letter.
Mm-hmm.
And I love writing during like a birthday or Christmas or whatever, having people, or any time, having people write about your child. You write something about them, burn it, and take the ash and plant a rose bush or something beautiful out of it that will grow out of that love.
I love that idea, Mom. Writing letters, you can even mail them if you want. I mean, I would have spent a lot more time with Scott if I knew he was going to die at 17. I would have told him I loved him. The last thing I said to him wasn't I love you, it's I'll see you later. You know, I would have done things so different. I wouldn't have moved, you know, been out west at school. I would have stayed in New York and stayed with them. I mean, we all would have done things so different had we known, but we didn't have a roadmap. We didn't know this was going to happen.
Well, and I think that that obviously what you're saying, Gloria, I love it. Of course, they hear us, so we tell them exactly what we want them to know. And I think that our kids, as Heidi is saying, know that we love them so much, and they understand that we're going through something that's more difficult than any other kids and parents that they know are going through. And they are cutting us enormous slack, which I love hearing, because it is hard to be, to feel like you're being a good parent when you're preoccupied with grieving the passing of another sibling. So thank you for telling us that. That's good to know. Let's see, and if you guys want to give us some other tips on what you did in the very beginning, that would be wonderful.
Well, I just want to say my heart goes out to the people who have recently had a loss, and with this COVID, all these losses we're hearing about, it's a really tough time, and I know people are losing, you know, children and siblings, you know, and I just want to say, first of all, my heart goes out to you. That first year, it is so tough. You just got to get through it. That second year, again, you start to reevaluate. The third year, it seems to feel a little better. But some of the things I did was, early on, I didn't do anything, by the way. For a few weeks, I think I just sat around and you know, months. But one day I heard a voice, and it said to me, if you don't get up and do something, you're going to get sick. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I actually argued with it. And the voice said, yes, you are. And so I got up and put my running shoes on. And it just makes me want to cry when I think about myself at that point. And I was running in the neighborhood, and I knew that all the neighbors were looking out the window in my mind saying, look, she doesn't care about her child. Because if she did, she wouldn't be out running. And that guilt, please, everyone, if you've got that guilt about taking care of yourself, your child wants you to take care of yourself. You need to take care of yourself, whatever you need to do. Journal, drink water, go for walks, you know, whatever you can do to get yourself to move and realize that you're loved so much. So Heidi, what's your thought?
The best gift you can give your surviving children, if you have surviving children, is to take care of yourself. We've lost a sibling, and we are terrified that one of our parents is going to die because they are in such bad places. and it is so scary. So that, just seeing my mom, knowing that my mom did that was super important for me. And the other thing I want to say is this COVID epidemic, this pandemic is super hard for people that are grieving, because you're sheltering in, and you're alone with your thoughts of your children or your siblings, and you're on the news seeing all these families and knowing that have had deaths and knowing exactly what that is going to look like for them, because you're on this journey. It's a really hard time in the world to be grieving.
Yeah. And I want to do a shout out to parents with no living children.
Mm-hmm.
You are still a parent. You'll always be a parent. And this could be an incredibly difficult time. And it's important to, I don't know, there's a group called Alive Alone that you might look at online that is for people, parents with no living children. So again, my heart goes out to you.
We have a group that's starting in Helping Parents Heal as well, that's specifically for parents who don't have any surviving children. And I wanted to just say that Galen is asking a question that I would love to hear your answer to, but also maybe Irene could chime in on this. I have new friends who lost their only child. I have more than one child. Other than, expressing love and sharing the truth of child loss, how else can I show up for that parent in a loving way? Maybe you guys, this is what you were speaking to, and that's wonderful. But how to help, whoops, I just stopped my video. How to help others with this situation.
Well, did you want Irene to focus on it, or do you want me to say something about it? I think, in an ideal world would be out and about now, and I'd say drop off some groceries or mow the lawn, or don't ask them. My pediatrician used to appear in my yard and walk around and, in the summer and see how we were doing and leave. Any little kindness you can do for people where you don't ask them, you just kind of show up and you're there and be a listening ear. But I'll have to say that I have found that sometimes people aren't ready yet. So a card or something where they don't have to respond to you, maybe a quick email saying just, I'm thinking of you, because they may not be ready to deal with it yet. I've had that happen where I've gotten in touch with people who said to me, well, get in touch with so-and-so, and you call so-and-so and so-and-so is not ready to talk.
Well, the other thing I get, because I'm in private practice, people will call me and say, my friend just had a daughter that died. I'm going to give her your information so she can come see you. And I'm like, does your friend want to come see me? I mean, sometimes people don't want to go and talk to a therapist. I mean,
the thing is, don't try to fix people, and don't want more for people than they want for themselves. Remember that. Don't want more for people than they want for themselves. Try to find out what it is they really want.
Well, and we all know what we wanted. So I think what we wanted, support and acknowledgement and support and validation is really oftentimes what you're looking for after loss.
Sometimes some of the best things you can do is give them an opportunity to serve you.
Yes, I agree. I think that's a very good idea. And we had some neighbors come with dump trucks full of gravel for our driveway because they thought we needed it, and just start putting the gravel on without even having us ask after Morgan passed. And
I love it.
It's true that it's wonderful to do random acts of kindness to parents, or for parents. But I wanted to just get Irene's thoughts on this, about how we as parents who are Shining Light parents, but who have children, can help someone who has no surviving children, and what kinds of things that we can do maybe to help them. Irene, do you have your microphone on? Can you?
Yeah, I have my microphone on. And I don't, in some ways, sometimes I think it's easier because I don't have to worry about who I'm sharing my grief with or how I'm expressing myself. But since joining support groups, I feel like I do have children. All the kids are my kids. And I feel so connected that way. And I've said this before, I think the most difficult thing for those of us that have given birth to only one child or had one child is that I felt at first that I was no longer a parent. And once I realized I will always have a relationship with my daughter, it's just she no longer exists in physical form. She still exists. And that paralyzing question of how many children do you have? And I literally kept myself shut in, being afraid of what I was going to say. And once I realized that I could say, I have a daughter, she resides in spirit. And then sometimes people would just choose to not say anything else after that, or they'd ask me further. So I think just acknowledging that we still are parents, that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Elizabeth's sound's gone up.
But
Sorry, Litzy is asking also the name of the new group, and I know that you're involved in that, Irene, for parents who have no children here, whose children have all transitioned.
I'll look at it and get it up on Facebook. We've had so much going on between
there are a lot
the
of
conference and everything else, and meetings every day. And but yes, we need to get back working.
There is an organization called Alive Alone online.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Anna is saying, why does my 22-year-old son, he doesn't want therapy, I don't want to push it, but I feel deeply that he can benefit since he has his two brothers who have passed just very recently as well, within 3 months actually.
Wow.
But my 14-year-old is very spiritual, and he tells me that he talks to his brothers and he knows that they are around him. But my 22-year-old only wants to smoke weed is what she's saying. So I guess that siblings deal with passing of their brothers and sisters differently too.
Let me say, I had 3 daughters. I sent them all to therapy. What happened, Heidi, right after?
I am a big proponent of therapy because I am a therapist, a psychologist in private practice, but you have to really want it, and it's not for everybody. And if you have a support system, I think that is good. That's a good thing, like something like this.
My daughters went, but it didn't work out for any of them, right?
Right. The problem with my therapist is that I went there. I had a very traumatic loss. My brother's car had basically blown up. So I needed to discuss that, and I needed to discuss it in detail because it wasn't a thing that I ever talked about. And as soon as he asked me why I was there, and I told him in, detail, I don't think he could hear it. I don't think he could handle it. I mean, there's therapists out there that are great, and there's ones that aren't. And he said to me, I know that happened to you, but we need to start when you were born, and then we'll eventually get to your brother's death. And I was thinking, wait, what? I'm in crisis right now. I don't want to go through the first 20 years before we get to the death. So that was not a good experience, and I didn't go back to him. So like I said, goodness of fit is everything in therapy. You need to find someone that really understands grief and loss and that gets it.
And also, I would ask you, have you been to therapy yourself? And as a family therapist, if you really feel that your child needs therapy, I would suggest that you go yourself and go to a family therapist and let them help you get your child in, or maybe there's some things that you can do yourself. But 2 months and losing 2 children, wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that is for the whole family. It's just incredibly,
I have like my mom said, I have a lot of parents that will come to me and say, Heidi, can you help me? This is what's going on with my child. And we will brainstorm together in the office. Being 22 and not wanting to go to therapy and not wanting to deal with this is called a normal 22-year-old. So very normal 22-year-old. You want to be back in the life that you were once in. You don't want to be seen as this person that's had something very bizarre happen. Your 14-year-old, God bless him, is actually not normal. He's amazing, but a lot of, it's more the norm of, okay, I don't want to upset my parents. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to go there. I want to pretend this didn't happen. I want to, numb out with weed or whatever it is. It is concerning sometimes because sometimes kids can engage in high risk behavior and they can self-medicate too much. So you need to keep your eye on that. So.
And that's the whole thing about looking, it's hard now to see at what kinds of changes there are, if they're still going to school, what they're doing. I call the smell test. If they start smelling, people don't want to be around their friends. They may just dress grungy, but if they start smelling, then you've got to worry about, getting them some help. But as I say, one of the best ways is to do it yourself. And I think when the conference comes back again, going to Helping Parents Heal and bringing them to be with other siblings is the best thing you can do. And sometimes you have to bribe them to come. If it's in a neat place, you have to say, oh, we'll take this little trip before, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. And sometimes you just have to say to a 14-year-old, I want you to go. You have to go. I'm your parent, and I want you to go with me, and it's not a choice. So, and you can talk to other parents about Helping Parents Heal, or Elizabeth and Irene. I'm sure they can help you figure out how to get your kid there. But, they don't want to do an online group. But I will have to say that Heidi's 14-year-old sister did not deal with Scott's death for many, many, many years, and finally has, and she works with us right now, but not for a long time, did she, Heidi?
No, and she coped in much the same way the 22-year-old is, to be honest with you.
Right.
So I would also say, it's understandable to be concerned about your surviving children, and I don't know anything about the 22-year-old, but you want to make sure that I don't know what he's doing. I mean, where do they get their sense of confidence, and where are they connected? And it might be from social, it might be from school, it might be from something else. I mean, if you have concerns, I would definitely reach out, like my mom said, to a counselor and say, this is what's going on. Should I be concerned? Because sometimes when you're grieving, you don't know if this is normal or is it not normal. It's hard to tease it out.
But one of the other things you can do, if you have some good friends who have kids that age, go to them and say, how's he doing? And this is what he's doing. What are your thoughts? If you don't, go to some people who you think are doing a good job. They don't even have to be a good friend. It may be your pastor's family or something. Go to the wife and say, I think you've done a good job raising your kids. Here's what my son's doing. What suggestions do you have? And you can start out there if you don't want to go into the therapy world. And tough, again, it's early.
And the other thing I want to say is that even if siblings don't look like, sorry, Elizabeth, even if siblings don't look like they're grieving, they are. They are just grieving on their own time, in their own place, in their own way, and alone.
Mm-hmm.
Anna is saying that is a good idea. Thank you. Thank you. So she's happy about that. And I wanted to say that, speaking about the conference, we actually were having all of our volunteers who were actually Shining Light siblings. So the people who were going to be volunteering at the conference, and this was going to also allow them to come and meet other Shining Light siblings. So if kids are old enough to be able to volunteer and to be able to help, then I think that that's a great way for them to get to the conference and meet some other kids who are the same as they are. And I think, as you guys were saying, it's really important for siblings to be able to meet other siblings who are in the same situation, to see what problems and issues they're going through with their parents, and maybe talk about how crazy their parents are right now. Oh my gosh, can you believe that my parents are doing this or this? And then they can agree and say, oh, this is normal. This is something that everybody's going through. Lisa Wilcoxon is asking about young children, young siblings, when there's a passing of a sibling. Do you all have anything that you might be able to help with in that situation, about ways to make it easier for them as they grow up?
Well, I think one thing is, early on, is to get help from friends. It's hard now, people who have smaller kids, maybe one or two, people want to help out. Can you take my child to the playground, or get other people to help? If it's Christmas time, I always say, give a cousin or an aunt, or birthday or whatever, have other people help them buy presents. Don't spread yourself too thin. Get help, bring people in to help, because they're high maintenance at that time. But I think, honestly, the way your kids are going to handle it is going to be how you handle it. So you have to look at yourself and say, what are you doing? Are you got a million pictures around the house? Is the bedroom still the same after 5 years? You know, have you got all this stuff sitting around? I mean, what are you doing? Because your child wants to know, again, as Heidi said, that they're enough. That's what they're looking for. It's not some missing piece in the puzzle. There's a puzzle, but there's a piece there. It's just a different shade. So that's my thought. What's yours, Heidi?
So I was looking at the chat, and it looks like this child is 7, and that the child is sheltering in and saying that life isn't fair. None of this is fair. The first thing that I would do is, you don't argue with that. He's right. None of it is fair. None of it is fair. And then I would say to him, and any 7-year-old that has had the death of a sibling would think none of it is fair. How you're feeling is normal. Bring in other outside people like that. So every 7-year-olds respond this way. It's normal to feel that way. Tell me more about your feelings. Tell me more about what's not fair about this. Mm-hmm. You know, without judgment, and let this child talk about it. Give them a space, because we want to argue with kids' reality and say, no, it's, you know, let's make it better. We want to fix it before we give them a space to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And then I would want to say to parents that have small children, be careful about how big you're grieving in front of them. So for example, while it's very important to be able to grieve and show kids that this is what it looks like when someone dies, and I'm sad, mommy's sad, daddy's sad, if you start to wail and fall on the ground and get out of control, it's really terrifying. And if you do that and you can't help yourself, you need to tell the child, I need a minute. I'm sorry. I miss your brother or sister. You didn't do anything wrong, because kids are very self-centered. You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't about you. I'm just sad. And I'll be okay in a little bit. And mommy and daddy are not always going to be grieving. We are sad, but we are going to be able to take care of you. When I was 20, and my sisters and I were terrified when we heard my dad wailing in the basement in a fetal position, that this was our new life. And that I honestly thought, well, maybe I'm going to have to take care of my parents. I better get a job. I mean, full time. I mean, your mind goes to those spaces. You've never seen your parents so vulnerable. So for little ones, just to, you know, if you need to do that, maybe to step out of the room if it's getting too much.
And I wanted to say, you might notice some behaviors from a 7-year-old, because a 7-year-old is for the first time understanding reversibility. Kids below 7 don't, when someone leaves, they don't know for sure if they're coming back. But kids who are 7 understand death for the first time, starting in those age groups. So you may hear some questions you've never heard before, because it may be some maturation coming on.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And
Thank you.
The other thing is, go to the Dougy Center, DOUGY, the Dougy Center. Donna Sherman and I served on the board of the Compassionate Friends with her. It is an amazing resource. It is the best bereavement center for children in the country. And they have incredible free resources and an incredible video on how to talk to young children about loss.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I know that Mark Pitstick, who was a speaker just a couple days ago, also has a book that's actually for, it's for siblings, but it's for a little bit older. It's probably starting at about the age of 12 or so. But Roseanne asked a question, and I unfortunately didn't see it initially, and it's any suggestions on how to talk spiritual matters with your grandkids. Their parents are open, but I don't want to overstep my bounds.
There's some great books out, kids' books. I wish I had a list of them now, but I think if you go online to Amazon or look up children's books in grief, I think that is some of the sweetest ways to talk to them, and it's through, you know, little animal stories. And I don't think any parents are going to get bent out of shape about you reading some books to them. That would be my thought.
Okay, wonderful. And then Teva is saying, I have a question regarding young siblings too, and death by suicide. My son lost his sister when he was 2. He is 6.5 now. At some point, he will need to be told that her death was by suicide, clearly. But because it is online and easy to locate, it's because it's easy to locate via the Google search. It is difficult to know when to discuss this with him. He knows that she was very sick. She was chronically ill, but suicide was how she passed. So would you know a good time and how to approach this?
Well, remember what I said about 7-year-olds. Just let me say that, right? And then you can, that they're understanding reversibility then. So there might be questions that will come up then because he's starting to understand, the child's starting to understand that. But I wouldn't try to do it too early. What's your thought, Heidi?
I would get this book called My Uncle Keith Died.
Mm-hmm.
It is written by a child and his social and a social worker, and they're telling him that his uncle died by suicide, and it's in child's terminology, and it talks about how he didn't want to die, he just wanted the pain to go away. He was depressed. And then it's an educational book, because then it says, what would you do if you felt sad? Who would you go to? It's important to reach out. I mean, it is so well done. My Uncle Keith Died, and I would read this to him and then have conversations as you're reading it.
Mm-hmm.
It's written for young children about explaining suicide in a very healthy way.
That's wonderful.
I think also, I hope that you're feeling, I don't know, what do I want to say, a connection or some kind of peace around the suicide yourself. And if you're not, I think you need to find that, and hopefully you are, and you know, it becomes part of the fabric. I mean, I find that over time, it really doesn't matter how people died. The more, I mean, it's all about love. It doesn't matter.
Tava is saying, just in response to that she is at peace. And I know that she's actually one of our affiliate leaders, and she does a lot of work with newly bereaved parents. And so I know that she's moved down the line, and she is ready to help other parents. I think that it's harder to help our own kids, though. And so
I think Heidi's idea about the book is awesome. Then, if you're feeling, I think these books for kids that people have written, where they're animals and all sorts of things, and they're just a number of books out there. What's her name? Golden, Heidi, our friend.
Linda Goldman.
Yeah, Linda Goldman has wonderful books for kids on grief and loss.
Okay, that's great.
There's also a great TED Talk, and we've had her on our show, and I can't remember her last name. Her first name is Bridget. She's a teenager who lost her brother to suicide, and she does a great TED Talk on what things were helpful for her and what things weren't helpful after her brother died by suicide.
So what was her name again? Because I got Linda Goldman.
Oh, her first name is Bridget on this TED Talk, but I can't remember her last name.
Okay, Bridget TED Talk. Okay, I'll just put that, because probably.
It's a sibling suicide is what she talks about.
Sibling suicide.
She's a sibling. She's a surviving sibling. It's very well done.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Well, wonderful. So I'm wondering if I've missed any questions. I know that I missed one earlier, and unfortunately, April had to leave. But are there any other questions that anyone has? We're getting to 2 o'clock now, my time, and let's see. And this has been wonderful. I just appreciate it so much. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to ask? And if not, then we'll wrap up. And if you guys have any closing comments, maybe people are saying thank you. If you'd like to just let us know anything else.
Well, we'd love people to visit us at open2hope.com. We've got thousands of articles. They've all been vetted. We do television. We've got radio. We have over 1 million people listening to our podcast now. Elizabeth's been on. And we would love to have you join us. Our organization is called Open to Hope. And we call it that because we want you to open yourself to the idea that there will be hope again, because I know it is really difficult for people early on in those times. So we want to say God bless you. And we always like to say, lean on our hope until you find your own, and God bless. And there, turn it over to you, Heidi.
I'd just like to say that both Elizabeth and Irene were on a show together with Ken Ross, whose mother was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it was a really powerful show. So my heart is with all you. I want to thank you guys, Irene and Elizabeth, for giving siblings a platform, because you're helping build awareness, and that is greatly appreciated by me. And I speak for all the siblings out there because every time you do this, it validates and acknowledges our experience. So thank you.
Well, I feel very,
Thank
very
you.
grateful to have two people who can represent both sides of this. I know that for siblings, it's really hard to talk about this, Heidi. So it's wonderful that you have a voice and that you are allowing other siblings to feel validated. And not just you, obviously, Heather also works with Hope, Open to Hope. Your television show, radio show, blog, everything that you do is amazing. And there are so many archived shows available. So if you go to Open to Hope, then you'll be able to see all of these. And knowing that you all have spent a lot of time with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and now Ken Ross, who's her son, is incredible as well, because obviously she's been so important in the grief community, and she was and still is today. And I feel very grateful that you all were able to come and speak to all of us. This will be available on YouTube. If you have any books that you think of, we can add them to the YouTube, the information that we have under the YouTube, if that's okay with you. If you think of anything that you would like for us to put up there, that would be wonderful. And I truly appreciate it. And take care of yourself, Heidi. I know that you're probably a little still weak. And I know that it must have been a really hard experience, but you look fabulous. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone, or unmute your microphones if you can, to say goodbye to Heidi and Gloria. And thank you all for being on here.
Thank you so much. It was a great chat.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you all.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.